moderator for what promises to be a fruitful and interesting discussion. Today we talk about how young Africans are at the helm of an agricultural revolution in Africa. Our partner, the MasterCard Foundation, recently concluded a Young Africa Works Conference in Cape Town, South Africa, as a way of highlighting just how important agriculture will be in combating youth unemployment across the continent in years to come. Today we are joined by innovators on the front lines of making change in the agricultural space in their communities to talk about the common barriers that have made it hard for young people to access the tools for farming, as well as the innovations that they have come up with in order to reduce those access issues. We've been having a little bit of an internet problem, and so right now we have two people joining us. Joseph Masharia of an organization called Mkulima Young. Joseph Masharia is an Ashoka Fellow who was founded under the Future Forward initiative, and he's been working to make farming cool through the use of social media to really revolutionize the way that young people access and do farming in Kenya. We're also joined by Anne. Anne, I lost her last name. Anne Gretman, who's the manager of the technical services team at Making Sense International, and she works on a program in Liberia.
Okay.
Hi.
Okay.
Hi, Ross.
Hi. Okay, Lindsay.
So, how are you?
I'm very good, thank you. And you? Apart from this nonsense.
So Anne has been part of a USAID launch food security program in Liberia, where they've been helping to make programs to introduce agripreneurship in that country. We're also joined by Judy Stewart, who just showed up. Judy Stewart is also a Future Forward Fellow as part of the Ashoka Fellowship. And Judy Stewart runs an organization called Future Farmers. Future Farmers is dedicated to making commercial farming accessible for South Africa's black farmers in the Free State Province. Judy Stewart herself was a commercial farmer and really founded it to ensure that no young individual with a passion for farming is hindered by their economic status, race, or gender. So this is our esteemed panel. We actually could potentially also be joined by Chelsea. Chelsea Ellingston is the country director for an organization called CAD Africa. CAD Africa was one of the challenge winners from the Future Forward challenge that we had last year. And if she can get internet, I think she's having a little bit of a problem, then she'll be joining us as well. So welcome, everyone. We're very glad to have you here with us today. Just before we start, I wanted to remind everybody who's listening that they can also join us on Twitter and ask questions and have a conversation using the hashtag AfricaYouthFWD. So if you have any questions or you would like to converse with more people about what you're hearing, please find us there. Okay, so I've already sort of introduced you, but I wonder if each of you can go through and really talk about how you're participating or making impact in this agricultural revolution in Africa. Judy, can you hear us? Do you want to start?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, do you want to start?
Yes, that's fine. Basically, I started Future Farmers because agricultural careers were not accessible to young people in this country, and we didn't have any money, they didn't have any money, and I didn't have any money, so I started an apprenticeship program where I placed young people on commercial farms as apprentices, and they earned a salary. After a couple of years, once they became quite well skilled and I knew them well, I started sending them to first world countries to do 12-month internships. Most of them are in Australia and the United States. They work on very big commercial operations there, very high tech, and they bring some incredible skills and a whole lot of newfound confidence back to South Africa with them.
Great. So Joseph, introduce yourself and talk about how you're making impact in the agricultural revolution in Africa. You may need to unmute yourself.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yep.
Oh, Mkulima Young is a slang that means young farmers. So in English is young farmers. So we utilize the power of social media, whereby social media being popular here in Africa and especially in Kenya, especially the Facebook and Twitter, we engaged the young people on the Facebook page and also on Twitter, where we allow them to talk to each other, discuss issues regarding agriculture, also be able to market their farm produce, because the greatest challenge for young farmers is to access market information and also get relevant content that can be able to help them to do farming like a business. So after we engage them on the social media, we opened or we developed a platform which is web-based, a website called Mkulima Young, where they were able to post their produce and then also ask questions. But then thereafter, we have now gone a step further, where we have developed an Android mobile application that can be downloaded. You can download from Google Play Store with the brand name Mkulima Young. And for that app, which can be able to work even offline, the young farmers are able to post their produce. They are able to post any events they are organizing. They are able to ask questions. And that question is more of interactive, because other people can respond to the question they are asking, and they can be able to share photos. So what we have been able to achieve is to utilize the ICT in making farming more attractive to the young people. We have quite a following, because I received even questions from West Africa, Ghana, Nigeria, South Africa, Lesotho. So it's not only in Kenya. We have got a big network in Eastern Africa, West Africa, and South Africa. And now the next move will be able now to make that Mkulima Young app a regional marketplace for people even in Uganda and also Tanzania and Rwanda.
Mm. Wonderful. Okay, great. Anne, do you want to tell us what kind of impact you're making? I think you need to unmute yourself. Great, thanks.
Great, thanks. Sure. Making Sense is working in Liberia on the launch program. The launch program, their goal is to upgrade agriculture, nutrition, and child health in 2 communities and 2 counties in Liberia, and recognize that young people have a robust role to play in that. And so Making Sense is managing the youth livelihoods component of this program and engaging young people in agribusiness and agricultural production. And so we work with youth groups, already formed youth groups in local communities, and provide a training and coaching capacity building program for them that allows the youth groups to experience agribusiness and experience business techniques in a fun and engaging way. And so youth groups put together a community football match over the course of 1 day to experience what running a really small cycle business looks like, and then they come back and talk about it and talk about the lessons learned. The next round, the youth group puts together a small agribusiness at the local market for about a week, so another small cycle business, selling input materials for input supply materials to local farmers, and once again come back to their coach and talk about the lessons learned and ways they can improve their selling techniques in the future. We follow this on with a grant to individuals that have demonstrated acquisition of key knowledge, skills, and attitudes during the training. And these young people receive grants of materials that they can use to start a small agribusiness in their communities. So input supply or buying and selling materials. And it's accompanied by coaching. And the coaching is an opportunity for the young people to discuss various setbacks that they may have had and to leverage their peer networks and to understand better some of the risks that agribusiness entails, but to also be resilient in overcoming those risks.
Great. Okay, so I'm hearing that you incorporate role-playing, small grants, mentorship, and peer networking, all sort of major not buzzwords, but like trigger points that we know really help to engage young people in employment. Great, thank you all. So what I want to do to sort of start it is to get an idea of what the landscape for agriculture looks like. We know a lot of times that the sort of major language about farming is that it's not cool, that young people did not go to school to become farmers, and so making agriculture an option for employment sometimes feels like an uphill battle. What it would be really nice to know is sort of what that landscape for agriculture looks like in your country, in the community in which you work, and what sort of, let's really talk about what the barriers to young people becoming farmers or entering the agricultural market looks like. Judy, I want to start with you, but you're on mute, and I don't know if you know how to unmute yourself. Do you? Maybe Ross can help you. There's a little, if you click, if you go, yeah, there you go, great.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Lindsay, I think really one of the things that I would like to take up with you is that we deal with a major ingredient, and that is passion. And there is so much of it out there. I certainly don't find that the young people here don't find agriculture attractive. They love it. They've been exposed to farming mainly by their grandparents in the rural communities. We don't do any recruiting at Future Farmers. We wait for people to find us. And an awful lot of them do. And they come to us for help. There's a genuine passion for farming. And we don't mind what qualifications they have, or if they have no qualifications at all, we try to create opportunities for them in farming.
Mm-hmm. So there's no barriers to, I know that there's barriers to young people becoming farmers, though.
Yeah, no, there are. I mean, first of all, I think it's for most of the young people that I work with, they don't have access to agricultural colleges or universities because there isn't any funding. Some of them have problems because they've come through a very poor education system and they wouldn't qualify for colleges even if they didn't have the money. The other thing is that although these people are very active in small-scale farming and subsistence farming, in this country you just don't think of black people as large-scale commercial farmers, and that's what I want to change, and that's what we are changing. And just by producing young people with the skills to go out and run and manage 1,000-cow dairy or 1,000-sow piggery or a 600-hectare vegetable farm, if we can produce those people, there are tremendous opportunities for them in the sector, mainly in top management positions. It's very difficult to get into farming because it just happens to be a very expensive industry to enter. But we are certainly helping people to develop careers in farming, people who who really didn't have any hope at all.
Mm. Great. Anne, do you want to talk about a very different place, Liberia, and what that kind of agricultural landscape looks like?
Sure. Well, I think a lot of times we talk about this need to engage young people in agriculture, and I think a lot of times we think about agriculture solely as agricultural production. Young people are already many times, especially in places like Liberia, engaged in upstream and downstream activities on the value chain. So you'll see young people that maybe, you know, have an agribusiness, like what I talked about, an input supply business. Young people many times are those running the mills, the really small-scale mills you find at the community level, doing other processing activities. Many times it is young men who are doing the transportation of the goods from the local community to the larger marketplaces in the region or the capital city. And a lot of the retailers are young men and women. And on the production side, many times young people are already involved in agriculture. But I do think the difference is they are working with their parents, who are small-scale farmers or subsistence farmers, as the labor force, either for their families or for others in their community. But the one thing that's lacking on the production side is the young people don't have power, and they don't have the opportunity to make decisions and to start building themselves into leadership roles on the production side of things. So when I think about the young people in Liberia, they've grown up around agriculture their entire lives, and their parents and their grandparents are doing it. They may be doing it, or they may be working on the value chain. But whether or not they have the technical skills to go beyond that and to go beyond what their parents have done, and finding other entry points for them to start small and to diversify their engagement in agriculture, with the idea that maybe over time they will become more involved in production. But I do think it's important to think about the young people are already there, but their constraints are really around being the decision makers and being and having the chance to take a leadership role and to be empowered to do that.
Mm. Those are really great points, and generally overall what we're seeing in the constraints about young people getting employed in all sectors. So it seems to be really kind of parallel to young people getting into any kind of work elsewhere in the world. Joseph, what's happening in Kenya? Are young people able to make decisions to become farmers or to be part of the agricultural value chain in significant ways? Joseph? He was here. He looks like he's still here. Joseph, can you unmute if you're talking? Oh, yes, I'm sure he has so much to say about this. Joseph. All right, well, maybe he'll come back to us. So one of the main barriers. Oh, Joseph, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Okay, great. Did you hear my question?
No.
Oh, okay. Joseph, what Anne was just telling us that in Liberia, the young people are all over the agricultural supply chain, from production all the way down to retail in the markets. They really are participating in agriculture, but they lack empowerment, they lack leadership, they lack the ability to make decisions, and that's sort of what they're trying to combat with the work that they're doing. In Kenya, what are we seeing in Kenya in terms of the way that young people have access to and are participating in the agricultural sector?
I think young people all of Africa have got the same characteristics. What we have seen here is that media has played a major role in promoting agriculture and creating some inspirational stories. So you'll find most of the young people take activities that seem to be popular and the activities that are trendy. So when they hear that somebody is doing or practicing poultry farming and getting money, then most of them will go an extra mile to learn that activity. So that means that motivation and inspirational will lead to young people having what we define like an inter-competition within themselves, because you know a young person would like to be recognized as the best farmer who is earning. He would like to be seen in the media, and also in the TV stations. Now, talking about where the role they play along the value chain, of course, you'll find most of them, they will start in the production level, because that is what many people take agriculture is. But you'll find that now we are taking them to the next level of that agriculture is not only production. If you can be involved in transportation of inputs and fertilizer or farm produce, you are also in the field of agriculture. We have also found some young people getting to the service industry of agriculture, whereby those who have graduated and they have not gotten jobs, they are engaging themselves in providing services. Because according to our definition, the young we are targeting is about from 20 years to 35 years of age. So you'll find in that age category, there are those who have cleared high school, some have cleared colleges and universities, while others maybe did not go to those levels, but they have a role to play along the value chain in agriculture. So I can't say that most of them are either in production or in towards the provision of services or inputs, but there are somewhere where they see that, or they hear or read a story of a person who is making it or making money. The drive to them is, I'll do it because I want to make money from agriculture.
So you don't think that like 10 years ago in Kenya, nobody wanted to be a farmer. That was something that you didn't go to school for. It wasn't very cool. It wasn't even that it wasn't very cool. It wasn't an option for a career. Do you think that that's changing, mainly because of the way that the media is portraying it?
Yes, I think now it is changing because we are getting some success stories from the field. And now we are like changing the mindset that farming is not for those people who are retiring. Farming is a business. It's not just the way you used to do it for subsistence, for food production, but you can be in farming and making a livelihood out of it. I've met people who have resigned from their jobs because they started farming as a side job, or what we call side hustle. Then you realize it is even generating more income for you than the former job. And at the end of it all is how much you make. So they are resigning from their current jobs and joining farming and doing it as a profession, consulting, and taking it to the next level. Even some are even adding value and exporting. And even I've met a young person who is even importing some simple machines that can be used by the young people in the field.
So it really is now legitimate business. It's legitimate career option. It's legitimate business. University graduates are finding their way to farming, is what you're saying. Okay. Okay, so what I want to do is, we have a question that's actually come from the Twitter chat, and I think it was right in line with something I was really interested in learning about anyway. One of the major barriers, beyond what all of you have said, is that there's this barrier, and actually this lines up with what Judy's been talking about, is this barrier of access. A couple weeks ago, I was listening to someone talk about the fact that young people don't have access to land because land gets, broken up too much, and large quantities of land to do the kind of large-scale commercial farming, or even really high-income agricultural, maybe even small scale, but with a large enough piece of land, that's a real problem in many areas of Africa. There's access to credit. Particularly young women, they can't get the kinds of inputs that Anne's basically saying that they're trying to give to Liberians. how are you all sort of trying to counter the issues of access in the work that you're doing? Judy, what are you doing to make sure that young people have access to the kinds of jobs, the kinds of markets, the kinds of land, etc.?
Lindsay, you know, I would like to go back to the comment about the Liberian youth, where it was pointed out that because they're young, they don't have authority. They just work on the farm. Now, that is something that happens here as well, that young people are not decision makers. They're people who do what they're told. And what happens with our overseas internship program is that the young person spends 2 or 3 or maybe 4 years learning agricultural skills here in South Africa, and then I send him or her to Australia or the United States, and they are completely removed from the cultural barriers that they found here. And I've just had a case of a young lad who grew up in a remote rural community. He went to a remote rural school where the education was below par, and then he started working on a farm as a laborer in that area. And so he wasn't exposed to anything, and his whole life was controlled by traditional elements. The farmer who employed him got hold of me and said, I've got a lad here who is just showing a lot of potential and a lot of passion. And he said, can we do something for him? And we sent him to California for a year. Now, this is a boy who might have seen an airplane passing overhead, but that's as close as he will have ever been to an airplane. And we sent him all the way to California. And he moved into an operation there where they had 9 other interns from Europe. Most of them had veterinary degrees, degrees in animal nutrition, whatever the case may be. They were highly qualified people. And he went there just having finished school and having some practical experience on a farm. And I got a message from the owner of the farm in California, and she said to me, Judy, you know, Vianney is showing some real leadership ability. And over a period of time, he climbed up through the system until he was the boss of all these people from Europe with their qualifications, because he was a natural leader and because he was being given an opportunity to express it, and because he didn't have any of that cultural baggage that said, because you are young and black, you are not allowed to make decisions. You are not allowed to take responsibility. You can't do this. You can't do that. Now, this lad has come back from America after a year, and he sees himself as a different person. And he believes in himself. And he's saying, I am Vumani. I can lead. I can run 1,000-cow dairy. And I don't need anyone to tell me that I can't. And just removing them from that environment where their culture is the controlling element, and placing them in a first world country for a year. They don't go there to learn farming technology, because our technology is very advanced here. They go there to learn about themselves. They go to learn about work ethic, confidence, and who they can be. And if you're working for an American or an Australian, and that person says, wow, you're the best intern I've ever had on my farm, this is happening.
Yeah.
I mean, suddenly they start to feel as if they really are somebody. And they come back to South Africa, we give them a great job, and they lead, and they take over, and they know what they can do. So that internship for us is really, really important. And it's putting them into a position, it's preparing them to become leading commercial farmers. And the first thing we have to do is to get them to believe that that is a role that is for them. I can be a leading commercial farmer. It's not for somebody else, and it's not exclusively for white people. It is for me because I am good at it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Judy, I think you're really pointing to something that we've just talked about a lot over the last year, which is that at the end of the day, when we're talking to young people and trying to come up with career options for them, that it's not one size fits all, and that it really is about helping young people find meaningful and purposeful work, which is, I think, what really is the key to what you're doing. Agriculture is important, and it's going to feed Africa, and it's obviously a growth field. But at the end of the day, what you're finding in ensuring that young people get into leadership is that they're finding purpose in it and meaning in it as well. That agriculture is not just going to fit everybody. It's going to, it's specific to some types of young people. And it's really about giving young people the opportunity to choose to be farmers. Is that what I'm hearing from you?
Lindsay, I think the big thing from my point of view is the people that we take on board are people with passion. I don't care whether they've got any qualifications at all, but I do care whether they actually want to farm. And then we start off by finding out what kind of farming they want to do. Some people want to grow flowers. We've got some people who are training to grow golf courses. We've got people who are doing pigs. We've got people who are doing grain production. It doesn't matter, even horses. It doesn't matter what they want as long as they're doing something that they love. So we don't have a process for future farmers. We have a process for every single future farmer who comes here. We look at his individual needs, his individual desires, his individual interests. Because, Lindsay, if he loves his work, man, he's going to be good at it.
Yeah, no, it's true. And, I know that you've been working in probably a much higher scale than what Judy lovingly gets to do with the young people that come to her. How do you balance providing sort of the accessibility to becoming a farmer to a lot of young people with this, idea that some of them, it may not be for everyone, and at the end of the day that there's a process of learning to farm or learning agriculture that could be useful in other career opportunities. So what is sort of the idea around meaningful work in the work that you're doing in Liberia?
Sure, great question. So we see agriculture as a youth development tool more broadly. So when we are working with young people, you think about youth that are 15, 18, 21, 22 years old. They are still going through development. I mean, their brains are not fully formed at that point. And so it's still a time for young people to learn both technical skills related to agriculture, but we place a very strong emphasis on soft skills, those key skills that you need to be successful in agriculture, such as negotiation, negotiating access to land from your parents or from someone in your community, making decisions. So, should I buy improved seed? Should I buy local seed for my garden? Should I sell this at X price or something else? And what are the risks involved around that? And planning and thinking ahead. I think that's a huge gap in terms of soft skills that we see. There's this concept in Liberia, dig hole, cover hole. So when you have a hole in the ground, you dig another hole to take the dirt from that hole to put it in the other one to cover that hole, and then you're left with another hole. So these kind of short-sighted actions without thinking towards the future. And that's normal. I mean, that's how young people are in rural Liberia, but that's also how young people are, where I come from in the United States. When you're 18 and 20 years old, those are key soft skills that are important to learn, no matter what type of career you're going into. So, we've reached around 1,200 young people under the Launch program. So like you said, we have a larger scale than maybe some smaller programs elsewhere, but we think that the type of agricultural educational programming that we're doing provides key soft skills that are transferable to other places. Recognizing that when you're 16 or 18, you might be really interested in starting an agribusiness, but when you're 24 or 26, your life goal might look very different. And that's okay. That's young people and that's youth in development. And that's, I think, why it's important to think about youth as a different subset. You know, they're not adults, so adult programming and adult approaches don't work with young people. Young people need their own tailored programming that builds both, you know, technical and soft skills.
Great. Yeah, I think that's thinking about agriculture in a way that it's not just you know, another sort of another patch for this unemployment problem. That in fact that it can serve to be the tool for career development, for personal development. I think is important. Thanks for picking that up. And you know, Joseph, I want to bring it to you because I think that your approach with Mkulimayang, and actually somebody is asking for you to give a very concrete example of what you've achieved so far. So I want you to think about that as you talk through this. But what I would say, what I would like to know from you is how your approach is very business oriented. It's sort of like if young people can show that they get money from it, that agriculture can be anything. Like agriculture can be a successful job, right? Like as long as the money flows to it, that anybody can do it. But I think that that's really asking for young people to be businessmen, right? That agriculture becomes business for them. Is that sort of how you think of it? Like that this is just a viable business? And how is Joseph Macharia and Mkulimayang helping to really create business opportunities?
When we think about agriculture and the challenges that are there in farming, you first get, we need the information, we need the exposure, we need the market access and information, and we need financing. If you are able to get those three, then you'll be able to do agribusiness. Let me call it agribusiness. And I don't want, I also avoid using the name farmers, but I prefer to use agripreneur because they are entrepreneurs in agriculture. So when we look at it that way, the motivation for any person, especially here, to have a good life depends on what you earn. And agriculture became unattractive to many people because it has been used as a development agenda, a thing to alleviate poverty, a thing to feed the nation, a feed to make us feed secure. So sometimes we forget the business aspect. And that's why you'll find when agriculture is being introduced, things like inputs are given free so that people can grow. Then that becomes unsustainable. But when we approach it in a way that you need to make it as a business, then in any business, you must think of tomorrow, you must think of the future. So you'll be able to learn how to save, how to break even, and how to make profits, rather than just growing food for your own consumption without doing any record keeping or calculations. That's why I take this agriculture as a business, and when it is introduced like that, we usually have what we call like competition within the young people. When you have competition in business, then there is prosperity. And when it is fed like that, that's why when young people now getting into it, thinking in a different way. For example, I grew up from in a peasant family or a peasant farmer, and what all we used to grow was for our own consumption. The only thing that brought money by then was coffee. And now coffee is never being used as an example for young people to get into business because of the politics it has. So they are looking for any other option. So that option is now the exotic, or what we call the horticultural produce or livestock that take a short time to bring back the returns of investment. And that's why if it is taken as a business, you find more young people will have that inner competition to make their life better rather than just to feed their stomach. The other issue I would like maybe to comment about was about land. Land has been an excuse for a long time that young people cannot be able to access land. My big question is how much is big land for that person to be engaged in agriculture? Because here we have found people with very small acreage of land, even 2 acres, are able to make more money than a person with 10 acres. So I think here land is relative in definition, and also land varies from one country to another. This discussion of young people not accessing land will continue because land to some countries is cultural. What I found, people are leasing land from other people and now doing agriculture. Those people who are maybe engaged in primary production. So access to land will never will always be there as an issue, because historically land is one of the resources that causes wars or disagreement in every society.
Hmm. So would you say, I know from perusing your Facebook page and from your website and other things, that there's a lot of young people that are associated with Mkulima Young that are using really creative and innovative ways of farming. Like there's a lot of vertical farming that's happening, a lot of mixed farming to make sure that you can have a bunch of different crops all working in these very small spaces. And I used to live in Nairobi, so I even know that a lot of the horticultural products that young people are now introducing into the market were not there 10 years ago. Things like green beans and quail eggs, which was a very big thing in Kenya a while back. Things that haven't traditionally been there. What's really creating that? What's really like fueling that creativity and thinking about new ways of doing agriculture, Joseph? What's the fuel behind the creativity and young people to sort of transform traditional modes of doing agriculture?
One, the drive to do agriculture, as I said earlier, there is quite a lot of awareness that has been created through the media. You can now see in the newspapers every week they have like 4 or 5 pages about agriculture. We have TV programs, so that has created another revolution in agriculture. The other thing is that we have a rising middle class. So when we have a rising middle class or more development of expansion of cities, this creates an opportunity for higher demand of food, because per unit area you have more families coming in, and so we have also many people living in the peri-urban areas, and the middle class are also demanding some certain types of food, not like the old way of maybe they have more of the fruits and vegetables. So with the increase in middle class and also urban migration, whereby we have more urban flats coming together, there is that demand and awareness that has created a revolution whereby young people are now seeing you can, by selling produce in an easy way to people whom you can market even online. Initially, you could not be able to buy goods and being delivered to your doorsteps. These days, you can order chicken and then it is delivered on your doorstep. You can order vegetables and then they are delivered. So there is also change in the way people used to do business and procurement that has created that gap that needs to be filled by the young people who are doing farming in a modern way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. I was always impressed by the diversity of produce that had started to come into the market like 7 years ago into Nairobi. So I'd like to ask all of you a question that I think sort of ties into this idea of the creativity that is going to, probably be the transformation of the agricultural sector across Africa. Africa has long had, and this is actually a question that's coming from Twitter, so I'm just going to kind of preface it a bit. Africa has long had a tradition of big funders coming in, big aid models to try to address the agricultural sector. And I'm wondering if those have anything to have any play, or if you are co-creating or working with those kinds of initiatives, or if they have, any hindrance or help in the work that you all are doing. Let's start with Anne, who I think Liberia seems to be rife probably with aid programs. Wondering what kind of effect that has on the work that you're doing.
Sure. Well, we are working on a USAID funded program, and that's who funds our program in Liberia. And that's we oftentimes work with some of the larger donors like that in Liberia and places like Nigeria and Kenya and South Sudan as well. The reality is there's many players on the ground, but an organization like USAID it recognizes the importance of engaging young people, and so I mean that's the work we're doing. Is under that program. We're working with local partners, there's this sense of scaling, needing to reach scale. But I think we've found some approaches that are a bit more. They require more of a heavy touch, especially when it comes to young people. But we're able to do that under the type of programs we're doing as well. So I think it depends a little bit how the mechanism and the program is set up. But I do think there's ways to have kind of the larger scale programs, but also programs like ours that really do require heavier touch and a lot more collaboration, at the local level. So I think it's possible. And the launch work that we're doing the work on our launch we're doing is one example. And I'm sure many.
So is there any sort of need to creatively address bureaucracies that the aid industry very easily puts up? Is there any advice that you can give to people listening about how to collaborate rather than reject aid industry attempts to really address agriculture? I think number one, you've said that this is an issue of scale, and we know that that's true, that at the end of the day, this is the kind of money that's going to help us get scale. But oftentimes it's said that government interventions decrease in innovation. So just wondering how you sort of address that.
Sure. Well, I think the greater stakeholder community, there's so many opportunities for collaboration, and I think the donors want that as much as the people at the grassroots level, like many of the great people on this panel, the type of work they're doing. I think that the donors want that as well. Everyone's working towards the same aim. And I just think that finding those opportunities for collaboration, finding those opportunities for synergy would be important. I think in the youth arena in particular, there's been this change in mindset of working just with youth on agriculture, or working just with youth for entrepreneurship, or working just for youth with in the arena of health, and taking a holistic view of youth development. But I also think that mentality is transferring to other sectors as well, and that just means there's more opportunities for collaboration. That means that there's ways to bring in local organizations and donors and people working at the regional level to collaborate, to kind of take a more synergetic look towards to changing outcomes, really where it's important.
Yeah, I think that collaboration is the word, and thank you for finally finding it. But for this conversation, it really, this particular kind of question, it really is this issue of collaboration. And And it's funny because Joseph's talking about competition in agriculture is a very significant thing for building the sector. But at the end of the day, in youth development, competition rather than collaboration, can sort of affect the ecosystem. We've talked about this a lot, Judy, about building an ecosystem for unemployment. And I know that for you in South Africa, it might not be the large aid agencies that are trying to affect agriculture, and it might just be government or other large sort of bureaucratic entities. How are you working with and trying to affect the way that policy or government works in South Africa through your work?
Lindsay, it's really difficult because my approach is so different from theirs. For me, the most important thing is not to give a community a farm and a lot of money and walk away. The important thing for me is to take a young person and help him to develop his career. And remember that we do it through opportunity. We don't do anything for them. They don't get any money from us. They don't get any grants from us. All we do is say, this is how you do it. And then we mentor them and follow them. One of our African early ANC members, Steve Biko, said, handouts do not improve your self-esteem. Doing it for yourself does. And that's really the bottom line that we apply. But we want them to do more than do it for themselves. And what we're finding is, first of all, that a young person coming out of an impoverished community and making a success of his life is showing other people in that community, other young people, that, wow, if he can do it, we can too. It's there for us. And many of our young people who are getting into top management positions, doing great things, they are becoming mentors, and they are sharing their skills. But more than that, they're encouraging people, and they're saying, you can. It's there for you. So every time we take one individual and develop his career and help him to reach the levels that he can, I don't know how many other people we're reaching through that one individual. And all we're doing is we are telling him that he can, and that whatever dreams he has. One of our youngsters, I asked him to write something for a book that I wrote for future farmers, and I said, what's your advice to other future farmers? And he said, if you're not afraid of your dream, it's not big enough. And it's just amazing to work with these young people because they are excited about where they're going, they're passionate. If you're not working with people that are passionate, then you're not working with the right people. You need to focus on that, and I think we need to start out with the right people. And you can't convince me that agriculture is not a fashionable career, because there are thousands of people, young people in this country, that want to get into agriculture, and there really are places for all of them. They can't all own farms, and they can't all be dairy farmers, because each province has a limited number of dairy farms, because there's a limited market for dairy produce. So, but the thing is, there are so many sectors, and there are lots of niches where people can really rise to the top. But it's for each one of them to find out what that place is for them. And we just guide and encourage and support and help them in any way that we can.
Another Future Forward fellow, Marlon, I think somebody needs to mute. Another Future Forward, Marlon Parker, last week in a closed guest expert session on our online course, was telling the young people that what he wants to do to ensure that government changes is to model the kind of behavior or model the kind of programming that then governments or other kinds of large-scale businesses can then take up. I mean, I think, Judy, that's really what you're saying, is that you're going to focus on that, the best model for bringing young people into employment and into this particular sector, but that actually those are sort of general values that we should be thinking about in all the work that we do with young people. And then hopefully, if you put the right people in the right place, that builds the ecosystem from there. Am I getting you? Is that right?
Yeah, I think so, Lindsay. And we've just received some funding from government for the first time, and they have decided that they will pay the salaries of 100 young people to go onto farms for 1 year. And that is, I mean, that's a tremendous boost for us because we haven't had money before. But the thing is that what they are saying is that a young person can learn farming in a year. It doesn't work that way. We started our project 10 years ago, and most of the people who started with us 10 years ago are still with us. Most of them have got really top jobs in agriculture, but they still come to us for mentoring and for advice, and they even come to us to give us advice, which is fantastic because, we kind of feel like a family. But you can't just say, okay, we're going to turn this person into a farmer by paying a farmer for 12 months to train him.
Right.
At the end of 12 months, we've done it and we finished with it, and now he's on his own. You see, that just doesn't work. And we're going to take their money and we're going to put those 100 kids on farms for a year, but we're going to keep them on those farms for another year, and ultimately further down the line, and that will be whether we've got funding or not, and ultimately further down the line, the best ones are going to go overseas. So we're grateful for what we're getting, but what we're doing is so different from the way that things have been done before. I think it's just very difficult for people to kind of get their heads around and understand why we're working the way we do.
Yeah, Joseph, thank you, Judy. Joseph, I'm going to finish with I'm going to do this last question with Joseph, and then we're going to do one really quick round. Okay, so I know we're right at 10:30. Just let's go over like 3 minutes. Okay, so because I really want to hear what Joseph has to say about how he's creating sort of that enabling ecosystem and environment for agriculture in a very different way. What kind of support are you doing to create that enabling ecosystem? Joseph.
I think one thing is the ownership. When you bring ownership to the people you are dealing with, they feel part of the work. One, I believe that Mukulima Young belongs to the young people. They are the one that determines what comes next and how we are going to create it better for them to benefit. Among the many questions I get is, I have $1,000. What do I do with it to make money? So that tells me that some young people have got resources, but they don't have the right information. And when that is shared with another young person, it inspires them to know. But also, we are modernizing, or we are using the current technology that they are also using in other field or in entertainment, because young people are trendy. They go with fashion. If it is social media that is being used, if it is Facebook, then be in agriculture, let agriculture be in Facebook. Like now we have on WhatsApp groups. We have created almost now 10 WhatsApp groups of Mukulima Young, interacting 24 hours, 7 days in a week. So that, as Julia said, passion is the driver. And when you are engaged with them, and you identify with them, you spur them, because agriculture is not only farming. It's not like the pictures that are portrayed of an old woman with the tattered clothes and a hoe in a very funny soil or crops looking. We need to make the image also of agriculture of somebody who can live a good life. And that's what we have been able to do that. So making a different picture to portray agriculture in a different way. And also I believe that in Africa, when we have a model that is developed here in Africa and tested here, it will go far. It will go far. And also, I believe the middle class, when us people who have got earning and you have even graduated and done even postgraduate, but still going back to the rural area and showing that I can also do it. I remember when I go to my farm, I wear the gumboots and I start clearing the slow grazing unit. The person who is there, I don't treat him like my employee, but he is in a class to learn. And that has made even people who are neighbors to come and see if I can do it. And I stay in the state and I have traveled all over the world. Why not me? Because also us who are here, sometimes we go to the rural areas like domestic tourists. You don't want to touch that cow, you don't want to show them. So we need to be the role model. And when these people in the rural areas see the role model, they are able to adapt to the farming. So that's how we have been able to create that spur engagement in various platforms and providing a platform that is a one-stop shop. You market your produce, you get information, and maybe in the future you'll be able to get into financing.
Great. Okay, so we're right at the end here. It's been really good conversation today, mainly because I think one of the things that's really emerging, of course, is that agriculture is unique in that it's a field that probably will never stop being an important sector in Africa. But at the end of the day, when it comes to young people in agriculture, that we're really seeing a lot of the same kinds of programming that needs to emerge. Things that build better role models, that are really about creating soft skills and preparing young people for careers through mentorship and other kinds of issues. So I want to ask each of you just very quickly, like one sentence, maybe 5 words. We have a lot of young people that pay attention to what we're doing, and they're going to be sitting there at home wondering if they can do this. If you were going to give just a single first advice to a young person who is thinking about becoming a farmer or thinking about joining the agricultural value chain in some way or another, what very quick advice, what's the first thing they need to do? Joseph, you go first. First thing they need to do.
The first thing you need to do is to have passion about agriculture. Agriculture is not all that simple. It requires passion, patience, and dedication. But I would like them to look at it as an enterprise that is in agriculture. And that's why I'm calling them agripreneurs.
Great, great. Okay, Judy, he probably stole yours, but what would you?
No, I think for me it is passion, but I also want to know what their passion is for. In other words, I'm not going to put them into poultry if they want to work with horses, and I'm not going to ask them to grow flowers if they want to milk cows. So it really is about finding the perfect match for each person. I think that would be probably the most important thing that we have to do when a young person comes to us. Put them in the right place.
Great. Great. Anne?
I would say give it a try, be open to it, but also expect that success will take some time. You'll face problems, you'll have challenges, there'll be setbacks, it will be hard. Your crops might fail the first time, and that's okay. And that's part of what it means to explore something new. But over time, You'll, learn lessons, and hopefully we'll be successful.
So I just want to thank our panelists so much for joining us today. People that are viewing, remember that you can continue the conversation online through Twitter using the hashtag AfricaYouthFWD, and keep abreast of future online and offline events by signing up for our newsletters online at www.changemakers.com/futureforward. Looking forward to the next webinar, which will be coming in a couple months. And again, thank you so much to everyone for joining us from Africa, and Anne, who's here in DC with me. Thank you so much. Bye.
Thanks.
Bye.